I started out after the second grade to work in science in more profound ways. But I actually had my first scientific laboratory at 4 years of age. My own microscope, my own textbooks, etc. My own various things to teach me about science from a Chicago mail order source for high schools and college experiments in various sciences. And I don't know very much. It's impossible to. But I have some amazing skills, and I've accomplished now amazing work. The problem is you can't just explain to the government that you've defied the work of Newton, Einstein, Lentz, Faraday, etc., 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 and have them believe you. I've tried to explain my work to DARPA, the research agency within the Department of Defense of the United States. They were not interested. When the United States was not interested, I tried in 1982, in the fall of that year, I tried to give that information to the Israeli embassy on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. They had a man talk to me for a couple of hours. He was only interested in use of this type of motor for tanks. Nothing happened because wiser people in this tank commander turned diplomat knew that you can't be defying the laws of Newton and Einstein. You can't violate the laws of conservation of energy. You just can't do that. You can't defy Newton's first 3 laws, that of motion. Just can't do that. No more discussion needed. Case closed. Well, I knew better. I knew that as Einstein knew, Newton was not the end, and I also knew that Einstein was not the end. I didn't think I was smarter than Einstein. I'm just building on the shoulders of the greatest scientist that ever lived. It's as simple as that. And I'm doing that because I can, because I've worked incredibly hard to develop the knowledge to do it, and I have the genius and imagination to have done it. In Dublin, Ireland, they have working devices of rotary type that demonstrate the truth of my work. They're now building piston. I've worked with them to actually change their drawings now to piston type of dark matter driven engine, and I believe that they're now building prototype for that in Dublin, Ireland. But are they instantly believed by the world? Of course not. Those people are too clever. Once they find out that you violated the conservation of energy and matter, once you've defied the laws given to us by Albert Einstein and before him, Newton, Faraday, etc., 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 you can't possibly be taken seriously. But I will be. And I only hope that I will be taken seriously while I'm still alive, because I have done an immense amount of work to provide working drawings, which I call design concept drawings, for dark matter energy powered motors that will be able to turn salt water into fresh water and can be used for pumping stations and pipelines to irrigate the 3.5 million square miles, for example, of the entire Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, the Kalahari Desert, our the East's deserts from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Kuwait, Yemen, etc., etc., etc. All of the deserts of the world. I should note at this point that at the age of 12, I was able to watch our nearest neighbor, Tom Spate, who ran then the largest Caterpillar made, which was a D6, in his work as of a man who cleared forest paths for heavy equipment to bring out logs and take them to sawmills in the Auburn, Enumclaw area. As we were living in the foothills of the Cascade Range, and as I said, not that many miles, less than an hour's drive to Mount Rainier, which goes over 14,000 feet into the air. I believe 14,410 it's usually rated at. But by watching Tom Spate do work, which included the removal of old growth stumps in building roads into areas to log, I got to watch him make dynamite bombs. And I memorized how to make dynamite bombs. And I was able to be given dynamite to him when I was a little older. And I made dynamite bombs myself. By the time that I was in the 10th grade at Auburn High School, I was a specialized expert in making all kinds of bombs far beyond the reach of the mind of Tom Spate, our nearest neighbor. I made, in the 10th grade, in Mr. Cole's physics class, a nitrotriodide bomb, a very small one in a vial, and instantly upon having mixed it, I emptied the vial in the long runway area between his blackboard and his tables that he did chemical experiments on in both chemistry and physics. And it takes at room temperature of 70 degrees about 20 minutes for freshly stirred nitrotriodide to change into a high explosive that will go off with a feather touching it. And about 20 minutes into the lecture that day, he stepped on a tiny nitrotriodide bomb droplet, size of water drops. And it blew up under his foot and caused a small firecracker explosion. He immediately jumped. It caused a whole series of more nitrotriodide tiny bomb explosions. He ran down the length of his area behind his workstation, screaming "fuck," which was a marvelous thing for us students who didn't get to hear that from teachers normally. And he was shocked beyond words until the explosions all ended, as all of them went off from his running around. And when he steadied himself, he had one word: Sanus. Yes, Mr. Coles. What did you do? Nothing, Mr. Coles. Well, he couldn't prove that I had made tiny bombs. He had no idea how to make tiny bombs out of nitrotriodide. I was a specialist in making bombs of all kinds. I made, of course, nitroglycerin in small vials, just to amuse myself and to learn, educate myself how to do it. I made all kinds of bombs: high explosive, low explosive, and incendiary bombs. I used the incendiary bombs to help Tom Spate on odd occasions to make roads for logging companies, to blow up stumps. The way you do it, you drill a stump root system and you plant dynamite bombs using what is called called blasting powder. That has a name. It's a 60% nitroglycerin. It's stumping powder. Excuse me, stumping powder. 60% nitroglycerin, and the rest diatomaceous earth, and a Black Beauty number 4, number 5, fuse, etc., and blasting cap, and so forth. The whole thing. And I won't go into exactly how to do it, but you then, with that blast, loosen the tree's attachment to the soil around it and make it possible for DC6, the caterpillar number 6, with a chain and hook to shake it out of the ground. It loosen the soil's grip on it. You pull it out, drag it to an area, and then set fire to it with napalm, which he taught me how to make, with simple gasoline and detergent, which I won't go into, but detergent mixed together. And I learned how from him to make napalm. Well, that gave me an interest in an area of physics. And I studied the sun, of course, which until Einstein was thought by scientists to be made out of coal or some other fuel. Well, that of course turned out not to be true. But that was Einstein. But I wanted to know from these explosions all about atomic explosions. And at the age of 20, for example, I actually was able to talk to one of the world's greatest chemists, a man who held 2 Nobel Prizes, one for peace and one for his development of vaccine to stop polio, Dr. Linus Pauling. When he lectured at the University of Washington, he permitted me to talk with him for about 6 hours after he spoke. And he bought me dinner because he was dumb enough to think that I was quite bright. And I laid out my exact way, on crude drawings on napkins at the Hub, which is basically a dining and entertainment facility at the University of Washington for students and faculty. I laid out how to build an atomic bomb at the age of 20. And he agreed that I had it right. He was at least one person who was impressed by my cleverness. But it wasn't until my experiments with magnets, just plain permanent magnets, bought in regular stores, that I knew as a child that something was wrong with our knowledge and our appreciation of permanent magnetism. In a textbook that I have in my home that was jointly written, it was a college textbook in physics, jointly written by a Nobel Prize winner in physics, it says this about magnetic energy. It says, magnetism, and I quote, magnetism is an energy of a unique kind, close quote. Nothing more. No other elaboration. The Nobel Prize winning author had no clue. I wanted to know everything about magnetism that was permanent. A man named Werner Heisenberg, who ended his active career in physics developing an atomic bomb weapon for Germany, and was at the end of the war captured and questioned by American forces and British forces. He had studied magnetism and he had written on it, but he didn't understand magnetism, and I knew that from his writings. So I wanted to find out about it.